Hello, everyone. Welcome back to GM Prep. I am your DMSteve, and tonight we are continuing our series where we take a peek behind the blue glow of the lighthouse and reveal more of its secrets. Tonight we plunge into the final area of the Ruins of Gauntlight adventure, which is only book 1 of 3 for the whole adventure path. And this area is called Belcorra's Retreat. It is the most personal space of Belcorra that we have seen so far, other than the glimpses of her office in the library. I do just, for everyone that's been watching this series, I really do hope you guys are learning from what I'm doing and it's helping you with your adventures. If the things you're learning here are helping, let me know in the comments. I really like to get feedback and hear, hey, I like this, or hey, this worked better for my group, and integrating that into my game and sharing it with all of you out there who, like me, love these online resources. It was a much more extended break since I intended. So I moved this show to be every 2 weeks instead of every week. And it just so happened to be that the last time we streamed was on June 20th. Today happens to be July 18th. So it's almost exactly a whole month. So here's what happened. We pushed it to 2 weeks. 2 weeks after the last show was the 4th of July, which is a pretty big holiday, especially in my family. And since we were all excited to be able to hang out with each other again, we kind of went for it. I couldn't stream that night. No big deal. So I could probably stream the following night, right? July 11th. Well, unfortunately, July 11th happens to be my birthday. And, I didn't think it was appropriate to ditch my family in order to stream some Pathfinder preparation. So I did not stream that night either, which brings us to 4 weeks later tonight, July 18th, and we're back for some GM prep. So apologies for that. I don't anticipate it happening too often, but especially for those of you running the game, like how fast are your games going? My sessions, my playthrough, which we run on Wednesday nights, we just finished session 19, and they just went into level 4 for the first time. So that's 19 sessions across all those floors, and I feel like they haven't seen half of what's actually out there in the Abomination Vaults, which is kind of maybe we're slow, maybe we're not. I don't know. CJ says perfect timing because his group might be peeking into this floor very soon. Perfect. That's how mine is too. So it's a good timing, right? I figure if you've been running it alongside my adventure path, like prep, it's probably a good time for level 4, and you probably didn't get too far ahead of me. I hope that's my hope at least. So to start with tonight, let's just do a quick review about exactly the story that's thus far and the important story beats that we should keep in mind as GMs as we sort of prep this adventure. So, one big story beat that's important: Volek Azrene. He is the drow. He has the he is from the first level, sort of. He created Mr. Beak. Second level, third level. He's kind of been this constant sort of threat or presence, and he is intended to be the the book 1 mini boss. At the end of the adventure, when you get there, you're going to be fighting against Volek. So it makes sense that you should have sort of dropped who this guy is to your players, hopefully, unless they just bypassed every room that he'd mentioned in, and know what he is. Like, he's the key to the adventure arc. He's makes reference later in the adventure path. Very important. So, at this point in the story as well, your heroes should have a clear goal. That goal is being charged by the town to make sure that the lighthouse never fires again. Because when the lighthouse light up and fired, it scared the crap out of the town. So they've cobbled together this reward for the heroes. So the heroes are looking for a way to stop the lighthouse from firing, which that can be accomplished here on level 4 of the dungeon, not something that has to happen later in the adventure path, which is pretty interesting. Let's see. Oh, at this point, the heroes really don't have a good insight of the true purpose of the lighthouse unless your heroes went to the Cult of the Canker or the Temple of the Canker, and if your heroes managed to find the secret door that required a DC 30 perception check, which I imagine is not much. Um, in that case, your heroes don't actually know the true purpose of the lighthouse, which, as we know, is to attack Absalom, summon creatures from here to there, and raise the dead all the way on the other side of the Isle of Kortos. And most likely, your PCs have gotten small clues from Otari that's been trying to draw them down closer to his body. Those are the green lights that flash. When the PCs find them, it shows a message kind of telling them there's more going on and leads them through Otari's actual footsteps as he died down deeper, ultimately leading to his body. Okay? Those are probably the most important story beats that we should keep in mind as we look at the Belcorra's Retreat level this week. CJ is saying they fought the ghost. Is that Chandrisu Invisar, the book lady? Because my group had an interesting encounter with her this week as well. We talked about her on the last GM Prep episode. I didn't think my group would want to fight her because they're very roleplay heavy. Instead, the heaviest role player that really likes to, get in character, decided to fight the ghost because she was mean. And the results are in last week's stream. Crit on the first attack from the ghost, max damage on the dice. Second round, a natural 20 from the ghost, and another max crit on the dice. 56 damage dealt twice in a row, both times taking the fighter completely down. She was at dying 3 by the second round of combat. They had to hightail it out of there. It's a very tough fight, and I will say, as you'll see tonight, there is an even tougher fight here that your PCs do not want any part of. We'll get to that. Well, quickly, let's hop in. Let's look at the PDF and see sort of what is the general feel of Belcorra's Retreat, right? So, Belcorra's Retreat is obviously just another stepping stone as the PCs go down, but they have these sort of synopsises that gives us what's going on and the environmental cues that we should kind of keep in mind as we describe it. So, the 4th level of the Abomination Vaults was designed as a retreat for Belcorra to relax and to revere her uncaring deity, Nimbleth. No faction of significance holds sway over Belcorra's retreat today. Instead, several powerful individuals claim separate portions of this level. While they don't present a threat in numbers, these creatures are the most powerful foes the heroes will face in this adventure, meaning Book 1. The most significant ally the heroes can acquire is the ghost of Otari Ilvashti, the fallen hero who gave the town Otari its name. And for the environmental cues and sort of the sort of descriptions you should keep in mind, cool but comfortable temperature, fine furnishings that are very old yet luxurious, haunted house effects like closing doors, sliding chairs, play up that fear that the PCs might think something's going on. Profusions of fungi like mushrooms and that kind of sort of smells of dust yet faint spices, and spectral visions of rooms as they looked 500 years ago. So this sort of magic effects, you could like briefly describe the room as being extravagant, all the trappings of luxury, before it kind of fades harshly as the PC blinks, and now, oh god, now it's a scary, it's like rundown. But there's definitely some twisted occult energy going on here in this level, and it's definitely seeping around and affecting it. I do like the idea of the PCs open a door and go through. When they come back around, the door's closed. That'll paranoid the hell out of any adventurers, right? A chair just slides across the floor for no reason. Don't even explain why. Just let your PCs be scared, right? set up that creepiness of this level, and you'll be in good order. All right, let's take a look real quick at the layout of the dungeon. So compared to all the other levels that we've dealt with so far, this is actually the smallest sort of dungeon that exists. Hang on, I lost my place in my notes real quick. Oh, actually, I think I read the notes from last week on my last episode for the story beats. So a few more that I missed that I want to make sure you remember. 500 years ago, the Rose Guard defeated Belcorra, losing their rogue Otari in the process. Belcorra's ghost has returned, and she unleashed an attack on the nearby town of Otari. The PCs could have learned or should have learned about Volek, the draw mastermind, who actually crafted the lens for the lighthouse that can allow the effect to reach all the way to Absalom. Those lenses are very important later on in book 3. And he did not help Belcorra in her fight. He hid like a coward and regretted it and spent the rest of his life trying to make it up to her by helping her complete her goal, aka restoring the Gauntlight. And there is a town local, Lasda Vankerville. He was stolen away on his morning walks. He was actually taken by Volek and is being used to power the Gauntlet right now. His body is at the base of this lighthouse. The energy is both destroying him and regenerating him in this agonizing pain, keeping him alive and in pain for months and months, right? Since this thing's been firing up. He's the son of Brelda Vankerville, who runs the Rowdy Rockfish your PCs may or may not be friends with. Okay, that was the right story notes I wanted to make sure we knew. Okay. This level, much smaller than the rest of the levels, as opposed to the other ones, which can have like 40 plus rooms, tons of factions, a whole lot going on. This is less faction driven and more individual powerful creature driven, as the synopsis did say. The layout looks like this, right? The main sort of hallway here is called the Ghost Walk. It's filled with like caskets of all the fallen heroes that tried to fight Belcorra in the past and failed, and she locked their bodies in here to scare future adventurers from going deeper into the vaults. There are, you also have this Shrine to Nimbleth. This will be the first time they actually see Nimbleth. You have this sort of cavernous place out here, and you have this very nice dining room where Belcorra would have her private parties and such, and her own private office adjacent to the base of the lighthouse itself. Okay? But that's basically it. It's just a few simple paths, a lot of secret doors, but not a huge sprawling kind of stuff. So I think this is probably the easiest level to prep for. Probably even easier than level 1, I will say. Okay. How do you get here? There's actually 3 main ways from level 3 to level 4. I will cover them in what I think is the most likely order your PCs will find them. Way 1 is kind of the proper way, which is following Otari's green glow from one level to the next. If they were to do that, they would come this way, which you can see my party did. They come down this staircase. They encounter one more shine of the green light here that tells them, that the purpose of the lighthouse was to attack Absalom. And then it floats to the west and goes south and leads to Otari's body. Your PCs, if they go this way, they'll come into this cavernous space. They'll fight Jal Mesmin, the werewolf, which, we've talked about in the side quests in earlier videos, in this area, and this leads them into the Gauntlet. This is probably the most likely way your players would come. But there's another way I think is slightly behind in terms of likeliness, and that is through Belcorra's office on level 3. So if they go into Belcorra's office, they search her office, they find another staircase down, that leads them to the southwest side here. This is the dining hall. They call it the Belcorra's dining room, which is sort of her private, where she would have her friends and they'd have dinner parties and such. If they come down this way, they descend into the dining room. they're faced with these 4 skeletons, and I'll cover the combat details later, but this leads directly to this sort of undead dining hall scene, which is, in my mind, if you've played WoW, I played WoW back in the day. It kind of reminds me of the dining hall with Morose, I think it was in not, I want to say Kazakhstan. I don't remember, but the Mage Tower is a really cool raid back in really early, like Burning Crusade. And that leads from here directly to Volek in her old office. So this is kind of the end boss of level 1, right? If you can, subconsciously steer your party to come here last for an epic conclusion. Either way, they might have to see Volek and run if they have not found a way to beat his weaknesses, because he's no pushover, which I'll cover in a minute. And then last but not least, there's this cavernous cave here. If your party found the secret cavernous level in the 3rd level of the library behind some of the secret doors, or if they went all the way up to the well where the prisoner area was, climbed down the well, fought the gibbering mouther there, and then crawled down this small cave, they will end up here and emerge almost in the same place as the green light. However, they will not get the clues from the green light, like leading them to the body. And this fight would be much weirder with Jaal and the wolf on top of the platform, because Jaal barks like a dog and howls at them. And as long as they kind of like stay away from his territory and skirt it, they probably wouldn't have to fight him. Just food for thought, right? I haven't really thought about what would happen if my PCs came this way. And there is, of course, this very long, slippery trash chute that they can crawl into the dining hall, complete with a poltergeist attack that'll knock them right back down. So those are the 3 ways up. Going down further into the adventure, there's only one way. It's here, right in the middle. It's covered by all the ghosts and the spiritual echoes of these heroes swarming around the staircase, blocking further progress until the PCs can collect all 4 of the Rose Guard icons. And if they do that, then this opens and they can go to level 5 of the dungeon, which is like Adventure Book 2, called Hands of the Devil, which we'll cover in upcoming videos. So 3 ways down, 1 way, or 3 ways down to here, 1 way to go down from here. Well, one other sort of Easter egg wink wink way is this passage. This twisting tunnel leads from the 4th level of the Gauntlight all the way to the ocean outside of Otari, in the caves underwater. It's how Jaal, he was chased off a cliff, he splashed into the water, he found the cave, he crawled here, and he's been living here for 30 years, only leaving to get new wolf pets. Not really part of the adventure, but it is kind of an interesting way, and it foreshadows that there may be more ways into the Abomination Vaults than the PCs know about. All right, that's the general layout. Pretty simple, right? Okay. What are the major themes of this level, right? Because I like to think about factions. There's no factions, so let's think about themes. What are the themes of this level that you need to drive home for your players to have a good experience? Number 1 is Nimbleth. There are slight glimpses of Nimbleth above, but this is the first time it's laid very clear that Nimbleth is a major influence in the Abomination Vaults. Unless your PCs had really good religion checks earlier, or occult checks, and even knew what the kind of symbols were, here there's a literal shrine to Nimbleth. That can't get any clearer than that. After they see that shrine, they may be driven to see more information, do some research, talk to Rin. So that's good, because it kind of lays the foundation for a payoff down the road, right? The importance of like number 7, right? With Nimbleth, Nimbleth has 7, kind of like a 7-fingered hand, I guess. You can think of it like a hand. So whenever Nimbleth touches the earth, it kind of puts 7 divots into it. Or if you see like the Void Glitten, it's got 7 digits on his hand. If you get scars, you have 7 hold scars. This number 7 is very important in Nimbleth sort of like mythology. The mossy skulls that they've been seeing all the time, right? these sort of mossy skulls is the literal religious symbol of Nimbleth. Now they will recognize that, and it'll make more sense to them. And this also connects Belcorra to Nimbleth directly, and lays out without any doubt that she worshipped Nimbleth, that she wants to kind of bask in Nimbleth's glory, and her whole life is dedicated to this shrine, this cult, this existence of a deity that cares nothing for Belcorra, which is echoed in that all Belcorra doesn't care anything for her servants either. It's symbolic. As well, don't forget, it's very important. The finale of the whole adventure path ends with the PCs most likely using the lenses to focus Nimbleth's wrath on Belcorra directly. Nimbleth will come from this outer plane into our world, reach through, and finish Belcorra by consuming her ghostly spirit, giving her the eyes of empty death, erasing her from all existence and all eternity. Can't imagine a cooler ending than that. This is the first glimpse for your PCs that this is coming. Anything that you might find your PCs can't figure out, like they're just dense, or they don't care, or they don't look at the mysteries, Otari, the ghost, can relay that information here to them. He is in tune with the vault in a way that is very much whatever you as the DM need it to be, make it so. He can kind of just straight up give the information that you want your players to know in a fun way. But, lore dump the hell out of things through Otari. Also, anything they want to learn about Nimbleth can be researched in the Whispering Reeds, which is in the secret room in the shrine, the Temple of the Canker in level 3. It gives the PCs lots of power. It also allows them to learn about Nimbleth and potentially be corrupted by the book's influence. But it teaches them, Nimbleth brushed up against the material plane here, outside this Otari. It reveals the extent that Nimbleth is actually influencing the dungeon and the area and the swamp and the decay, and, all the wisps are coming, stuff like that. It's all because Belcorra built this shrine here to kind of grow the influence of Nimbleth, making that connection with our plane. So this is the first time they'll be kind of hit over the head with that fact. And I'm sure your PCs will have a lot of questions about Nimbleth. So as a GM, go read the lore, read some of the information in the books. Just have stuff ready to go so you're not stopping combat or stopping play to look up lore and just recite it, right? Just have a good overview of what it all is about. All right. Dark influences is another big theme, right? Not only is Nimbleth directly influencing the dungeon, the echoes of Nimbleth's influence affects everything they're seeing, right? Per the lore, which is fleshed out in Book 2, Hands of the Devil, in that book, it talks about how the wisps are considered the eyes of Nimbleth, right? There's a whole family of these creatures, not just like flicker wisps or corpse lights and will-o'-the-wisps. There's a whole bunch of different wisps, but they kind of are created from Nimbleth. They are drawn to places where Nimbleth are. They're birthed from that sort of dark energy. And so that's why even up in the dungeon, up around in the first surface, constantly throughout here, you're constantly seeing wisps. It's because Nimbleth's influence, the dark influence of Nimbleth. This whole level, by the way, filled with wisps. Almost every encounter has some sort of wisp involved, which is pretty cool. The Otari himself is haunted by 2 flicker wisps and a regular will-o'-the-wisp. They've been taunting his soul and feeding off his fear for 500 years, and he's had to take it. When the PCs show up, it's the first chance he gets to break free of this torment. The Shrine of Nimbleth here, it literally generates flicker wisps every day from inside the shrine. That's how much of an influence is here. Lazda down here in the lighthouse, Lazda, will-o'-the-wisp, feeding off his fear, feeding off his death. Here in the dining room scene, these skeletons are actually corpse lights. A callback to earlier. More wisps, right? And most dangerous of all the wisps, the Void Glutton in Belcorra's suite over here. This thing, this dark void with a bundle of eyes and 7-digit fingers coming out of it, by far will annihilate your PCs if they attempt to fight it. So we'll cover that in detail when I get to the combat section, which is coming up next, but just wanted to point out, don't fight this guy. It's really hard to get to, and the chances that they stumble into it are unlikely, but, you know, anything's possible. So that, I mean, like I said, this is a very small level, so that's kind of the main themes of this level. So, without further ado, let's segue into combat. Everyone's favorite thing in Pathfinder, combat, right? That's why we play combat, tactical combat games. So, the first fight I gotta cover is also the most important fight in the entire adventure. Book 1, that is. Volek Azrene. Let me pull up. You can see a nice picture of Volek here. This full sort of man. He's a worm that walks. He's actually a bundle of leeches. He's the big bad boss of Book 1. He's been followed since the first levels of the dungeon. Your PCs should be scared just to hear the name Volek. He's actually no longer the drow that we knew him about, right? He's transitioned into a worm that walks made out of leeches. He took his body, fed his body into a ritually prepared vat of leeches that consumed him and turned him into this form you see today. Is that weird? Yeah. So I like to imagine, right? He doesn't have a mouth. He doesn't have a face. They kind of vaguely make this humanoid body. The arms look a bit too long. The feet, like everywhere he steps, leeches are falling out. But I like to imagine with his face, because he can talk, right? But his face, he doesn't have a singular mouth or anything like that. So when he talks, I like to imagine the leeches sort of like flop around and kind of make that sort of like moving mouth kind of thing. But all the sound comes out through like the pops and hisses of leeches, like trying to emulate sound. Lay into that creepy vibe, because this guy, he is a shell of his former self. This is the ultimate form of his research, his attempt at immortality. The worm that walks, leech form. Okay, so make sure, the first thing you need to do is make sure that you have taken a good amount of time to research his abilities. He is probably the hardest to run monster that I've seen in the Avenger path so far. And so I want to take a minute to highlight some of his key defenses, properties, and stuff like that. So let's talk about his defenses and what you should know, right? Because he is a pile of leeches, he has this ability, which is referred to as, I don't know where it is on here, but it's called all around vision, right? He doesn't have singular eyes. He has eyes everywhere. He cannot be flanked. So there's no flanking bonuses for fighting Volek here. As well, he has, let's see, what else is this the one I call out? He can't be flanked. He has resistance 7 to all physical damage. Doesn't matter if your sword's magical or not. A straight 7 damage reduction off all attacks. And that's because you're cutting through like tons of little things, right? You can't realistically, you kill one leech really good, it doesn't affect the body. He's immune to poison damage because they're leeches, and he's immune to precision damage again because he doesn't have vital organs. Rogues are kind of boned here. There's no flanking. He's immune to precision damage, so sneak attack's not going to do a lot. Rogues are going to have to get very, very crafty when they're facing Volek. And my party does have a rogue, so I'm, very interested to see how that goes. He has fast healing 7, which means at the start of every turn, he heals 7 hit points back. It's a minor amount, but healing any amount every turn for doing nothing is kind of nuts. And if you look at this guy's AC, 25. 25 AC, folks. That's a boss level AC. He's a creature 7. Your PCs are going to be rocking decent pluses to hit. Let me just pull up my party's fighter real quick. New Lara. She has her sword strike, her +1 Morning Star and Trident, like, +13. So that means with an AC of 25, they need a 12 or higher to hit on the first roll, which means less than half the time, the best person in the party will get a hit, foregoing any bonuses they can get. Remember, they can't get flanking. Inspire Courage. There are ways to change this, but he's going to be tough to hit. That's, they just fought someone with 23 AC last week. They were scared. This is way worse. So he's no joke. But let's highlight the weaknesses, because if a PC is going to win this fight, it's going to be through exploiting his weaknesses and using recall knowledge to notice these weaknesses. First of all, the big thing to notice, he only has a speed of 10 feet. That's right. Because he's in the leech form, they're not very fast. He has a speed of 25 swim, but they're not fighting him in water. They're fighting him in land, so 10 feet. That's not very fast. That's a big weakness of his. He also has a weakness of 7 to splash damage and area damage. So splash damage, the acid splash cantrip or something like that, even the smallest amount is going to be magnified crazy and doing extra 7 damage. That's not an uncommon thing for PCs to have, and they're going to do AoE spells against a single person. So that's one thing they can do. And not last, but like very not least, right? Very much an optional side quest your PCs might have done. If they are able to find the picture of Volek that Borbo kind of tells them about, the one that was in Chandrisu's clutched dead body, in that case, if they show it, if they visibly hold it up so he can see it and see his original drow form, his vanity kicks in. He's forced to make it's called Hateful Memories. He's forced to make a DC 28 will save, and if he doesn't, he loses 1 action. He becomes slowed 1 for every round that he fails. And there's no immunity to this. They can keep it exposed. It can constantly be failing. He does have, a +15 to his will save, but that still means he needs to roll a 13 or higher. So most of the time, almost 75% of the time, he's going to be stuck in the slowed thing, giving him only 2 actions. Coupled with his speed of only 10 feet, it's really going to make a difference, I think. So finding the picture is going to be key in helping the parties take down this really powerful monster. That seems to be his main weaknesses. The speed of 10 also means, the speed of 10 also means he can flee. You can flee from him, so if they get it over their head, it's not that hard for them to leave. Wink, wink, because I'm about to get to some more stuff from him in a second. For actual combat with Volek, his main tactic seems to be using his tendril attack. Okay? It has a reach of 10 feet, so even if they're not next to him, it still can reach. It does 2d8 plus 8 persistent damage. So this isn't even a thing. You just hit them on them, and then until the PCs spend their time getting the leeches off or getting lucky with a flat check, they are taking 2d8 plus 8 every round. That's no joke. Like that is going to be putting, it's going to give somebody a hard time. And unless they get hit with like a splash damage or something, I imagine they're going to need to like brush them off, right? So that seems to be his main go-to tactic. He also has a just want to highlight +18 to hit. So if my fighter has 22 AC because the shield's up, the only way I'm missing is like on a natural 1 or a 2 or a 3. A 4 or higher is going to hit what is potentially the toughest person in my party. They're probably going to add a +1 armor rune before then, but still, right? Think about how hard that is, right? That means he can do his follow-up attacks, even with a +13 on a second attack. Most monsters don't want a multi-attack. I think Volek can get away with it, if there's no other better option. And second option, in terms of just creating damage, is the Squirming Embrace. For one action, he strides forward. He can end on the same square as the PC, and they have to make a reflex save or take 3d8 piercing damage from all the creatures swarming around him. That's really, it's flavorful, it's creepy, and it's actually really strong. Um, I don't know logistically what happens if he ends his turn sharing a square with another creature, if they eventually they get pushed off, or if I want the PC to be stuck inside of him. I'm actually not sure if there's a proper rules answer, but I do feel like I might just let them stay inside of him at the end of the turn. That's creepy. So yeah, if they they think they can, like, oh, I'll just move away, and then he has to spend 3 actions to stride onto me. His third stride is going to chew you up. That's really cool. But all that aside, that's his basic thing. If you ran him just like that, I feel like he'd already be a tough fight. Probably could just kite him down, right? But luckily for Volek, and what makes him really, really complicated, he's a full-blown spellcaster, right? He's prepared drow spells for hundreds of years before he turned into a worm that walks, and now he's had 500 or more years to perfect his art. So, what spells does he have in his repertoire that is going to help him? First, he goes all the way up to 4th level spells. Secondly, he has a couple of like high level spells at will, like darkness. And lastly, he has some rituals. I don't think the rituals will ever come into play in like a combat situation, but it's good to know that he can create undead and animate objects. If he knows the PCs are coming back, he will be prepared. Okay, first spell I want to highlight. Key spells to remember that Volek has. Dimension Door. We talked about this. He has a 10-foot movement speed. He can't go very fast. The PCs are going to get very complacent in retreating a little bit, casting their spells, feeling safe. Oh, I'm 30, 40, 50 feet away. I'm safe. Dimension Door for 2 actions allows him to teleport to within 120 feet anywhere he can see. So, couple that with the ability to do a 1-action stride and end on a PC. That's going to make him very mobile in a pinch that can really mess with your backlines a day, right? I just imagine they're retreating, they think they're safe, the fighters up front, the worms dissipate, Dimension Door to the back of the party, teleports out, and starts just wailing at people. Like, it's very awesome. I definitely highly recommend using that tactic. Let's see. Secondly, Worm's Repast. This is kind of his key spell. It's kind of his personal spell. It's a new spell in the book. It has the uncommon tag, so your PCs generally shouldn't have the ability to have this unless you as a DM allow it. So this is the way for you to get it into their book. What it does is it allows worms to appear in the target's flesh and gnaw on them for 6d6 piercing damage and additional 2d6 piercing damage as persistent damage. If they're not skeletal, if they have like a body and they're undead, it's even more damage. So it's not going to help Volek against the PCs, but it's going to help the PCs against other undead, right? And if they fail and they get the persistent damage, they're flat-footed. So not only is this spell powerful in terms of damage that it can do, it's also very flavorful in its utility. And your PCs get access to this spell after they defeat him because it's on a scroll on his desk. So make sure you use the spell at least once in combat so they can see it used against them. So then when they use it against someone else, it kind of reinforces that fantasy that this is Volek's spell, right? His personal spell. Otherwise, Vomit Swarm is very useful and flavorful, right? If they can't get an attack, vomit like leeches all over the party, have them all get eaten. Mirror Image is kind of cool because he's already a swarm of thousands of leeches. You put Mirror Image on and suddenly he's 3,000 leeches. And, because he's got the high AC. This isn't the best because even if you miss a melee attack, it loses one of the Mirror Images and he already has high AC. But if your party, for some reason, gives him an opportunity, he can Mirror Image and prepare that. He's going to be strong. Darkness. He has Darkness as an innate spell. If your party does not have a lot of dark vision, if they rely on low light vision and torches and dancing lights, dropping Darkness enveloping his room, right? He's got his room is not very big when they fight him here, right? Darkness should cover this whole space. It's a 20-foot burst. It's going to seal out. If they don't have dark vision, he's locked them into the darkness with him. They are in trouble. He's going to be hidden against everyone outside that doesn't have dark vision. That's a DC 11 flat check just to hit him. And if their allies are also in the darkness, that's another DC 11 just to do something like heal him. It's very hard to heal your ally in this darkness. It's very hard to hit him in the darkness. Great defensive tool, great offensive tool, very terror driven tool. The only downside is it takes all 3 actions, so he really needs to commit to it. So you have to make sure it's going to be worth it against your party. If Volek's smart, if he realizes your party doesn't have a lot of dark vision, let him go nuts. Now, there are some dark vision elixirs your PC should have gotten earlier in the adventure off one of the dead bodies. So it's important, if they have those, this could be a counteract to his darkness. And lastly, like a minor thing, he has shield as a cantrip. So if he ever has a spare action that he has nothing better to do, throw up the shield. He has like level 4 cantrips, I believe. So that means his shield has extra hardness. He can absorb even more damage. I wouldn't rely on it, but it is there. Okay. All in all, that means between his strong combat prowess, his high health, right? He's got 90 hit points, I think it was. 85 hit points, fast healing, resistance 7 to everything that isn't like anything physical. Volek is going to be an epic cinematic fight that you need to make sure you're prepared to run, right? With all these abilities we talked about. So give yourself some prep time. I may even run through and simulate a combat with him just to see how it goes. Maybe I'll even do it on a GM prep stream, just because I think this fight is key enough to take a little extra care. Yeah. So one way I could see this playing out is like Volek, the PC's kite Volek back up through this dining hall, back up to Belcorra's office, all the way back to the library, and he's just chasing them, and like they get to kind of go through all these places they've already been fighting Volek as spells are flying. I think it's a high possibility that's the way the fight goes. Or they could just like try to like lock him down here and fight. If they get a good lucky crit, they can take his health out pretty fast, I suppose. But that brings us to the last point of Volek. What happens when he dies? So Volek has a trait, as do all worms that walk, which is called discorporate. When Volek dies, he falls into a pile of leeches. The leeches begin to crawl and scatter and try to escape the area as fast as they can. And if even one worm survives, Volek will regenerate in 1d10 days and be back to harass the party. So, how this works mechanically is, if the piece... okay, the only way to take it out is to use area damage or any spell that has splash damage or an item that has splash damage, like poison, things like that. When the body falls, the PCs have 1 round to all make their checks. Anyone that makes a splash damage or an area damage gets to make a DC 15 flat check. If they roll a 15 or higher and pass the flat check, he's defeated. All the worms are dead. If they fail, then the DC goes down by 2. So the next splash damage has a DC of 13, the next one 11, the next one 9, all the way down to DC 5. So you better hope your PCs have some way of dealing with the worms. Because they're leeches and not worms, you get 2 rounds instead of 1 to take care of it all. Also, they could come up with a creative solution to trap all the worms. I was trying to think of a cool way, like in this fight, like what could they use in this specific fight to help? The only thing I could think of was like the bathtub. If like somebody picks up the bathtub and like slams it down over the worms as they like start to crawl away, that maybe can help buy an extra round or something. Otherwise, I don't know, but definitely reward your players' creativity here. And if the worms get away, then we just got another tool in our pocket to make Volek regenerate somewhere else in the lighthouse, right? Someplace maybe your PCs haven't been yet. He probably sets up a new lair and probably gets back to work on how he's going to get revenge against the PCs. and he can maybe be like your wandering boss that they face later in their excursions. Anyways, that's Volek Azrene in a nutshell. I want to hear your stories about how your fight went. If you've ran this fight, if you're watching this video later because you're preparing for it and you run it, come back to the comments and let me know, because I really want to make sure this fight goes off perfect. In chat, while I was doing this whole thing, Dalvin was basically, echoing some of my things. So he said, foreshadowing is key here. He plans to add information about Valak's transformation so the PCs can research worms that walk before meeting Valak. That's a really good tip, especially the fact that they should be prepared to deal with his body. I had Rin be this kind of conveyor of information in my game. They gave his diary because his journals are up in his office. It talks about maybe the things he was trying to do. So I had Rin sort of say, "Hey, I read his diaries. This guy is no joke. He kind of has this weird thing about transferring souls, and he believes he can transfer his soul into like a swarm of vermin. So be on the lookout. He might be alive down there in some weird form." So my PCs have that seed planted in their mind, but they did not take the bait to follow up and do research yet. So they may just be surprised, and they might not be prepared for this. I know my druid definitely has like a splash cantrip that he might use, but I'm thinking if you have like a burning hands as like an AOE that like torches the whole thing, which my druid currently has prepared. I don't know if he'll still have it during the fight. I feel like that should be like a huge bonus to lowering the DC for the roll because you're torching a 15-foot cone of leeches. And then he also pointed out that the +7 damage from the weakness to Volek can be very useful when you're used to rolling a 5 on a 4d12, which my druid the other week, if you saw it, 4d12 sudden bolt, 3 1s and a 2. 5 damage. It was 4 to 48 damage. He rolled 5. Really bad Rolek. So yes, just 1 splash damage is already going to beat that sudden bolt. And he talked about using Dimension Door to like pop out behind the PCs and wreck their plans is also a very cinematic moment. And I agree. I'm all about the cinematic experience and making everything feel big and epic. And I think the moment that this worm Dimension Doors appears behind the party and just makes everyone really question their life, and also potentially cuts off any sort of retreat. If you're a GM and you want to if you feel like your PCs can handle it, cut off their retreat so they have to flee the other way. The only way out from here really is down the garbage chute. So the image of your PCs jumping down a garbage chute to escape, pretty cool. That's going to do it for Volek Azrene, who, although he's the biggest fight, the end boss, he's actually not the hardest creature on this level, believe it or not. But in the very short term, I wanted to highlight not the Void Glutton, but I wanted to talk about this corpse-like callback fight, as I call it. So the first glimpse your PCs might have got of any sort of like creepy mysteries with the undead in Nimbleth, where the corpse lights in the shrine on the first level, they fight some corpses, the corpses die, the wisps come out, they're really powerful. Your PCs probably couldn't win the fight the first time they saw them until they learned a bit more, used the sunlight weakness they had. This is like a callback to that fight. In this room, there are 4 corpse lights this time and no sunlight to help them. Now, sure, your PCs are probably level 4 and not level 1, but it's still going to scare them. If they had a hard time before, they may be scared for this fight, right? I plan to play this up in this way. As they come down, all the skeletal remains animate, and they fight what they think are skeletons, right? I don't want my PCs to know these are corpse lights. I've gone and made the tokens named cute skeletal party guests, right? And I have the corpse lights kind of hidden on the outside layer. But my PCs are just going to think they're fighting skeletal guests. The first glimpse that they may have that this is more is when they kill one and the blue ghost pops out, or when one of them opens their mouth and barfs the blue light all over everything. Other than that, I want that like oh shit moment to come back, and it'll be like a callback to the first part of the adventure. Other than that, I don't think the fight should be too hard, unless they allow the corpse lights to get away and animate the other bodies and come back into the fight. I think the PCs should handle this. I think they consider this a moderate fight, and in Pathfinder terms, a moderate fight is nothing. Just it's like pushover, right? But they're gonna need most of the resources coming to fight Volok next. So yeah, we'll see. But I do think as GMs, it's good to do this callback to the earlier fight. All right. Next up, the other big fight, Jaal. Jaal Mesmin, is that his name? Jaal Mesmin. So, this is a potential resolution to the Ayla Kalino side quest that we talked earlier. Dalvin's saying exactly what I'm about to say. It says the werewolf is another enemy on this level that could really do with more foreshadowing, in my opinion. I agree. This guy would be completely out of place if your PCs hadn't gotten any sort of foreshadowing. They wouldn't have any idea what the significance of this event. I talked about this in my Otari video, that I think this is one thing you should bring to the forefront. And also in one of the earlier, I talked about this before and how to incorporate it. But even if you haven't, this is going to be a confusing fight, but still a powerful one. I mean, he's a werewolf, right? But agree, 100% foreshadow. Last week, I foreshadowed it again with my PCs. Kalino was at the Stone Ring Pond giving the Druids a hard time. They kind of did the lore dump. It's the second time I've kind of given that story beat to my players. Once was like 15 sessions ago, and once was last week. When they got here, they got here, even though in the same exact session I told them about the werewolf, nobody thought about it. They showed up and he was barking at them, and like nobody thought about it. It wasn't until my PCs told me. It wasn't until they left and I had them. They backed away because they didn't know what to do with this guy. They were not expecting to see a barking man. I had him howl like a werewolf, as they were howl like a wolf with his wolf pet. It wasn't until that moment the druid, who had been like kind of drip fed this earlier in the session, was like, "Huh, oh, it's probably that werewolf we heard about." So PC, players, they have a lot on their plate. Help them out, spoon feed it to them a little bit. Uh, Also, hello Valak Dischain in chat. Hello to you too. And CJ saying not a lot of interactions with Kotare. Yeah, this is one. Not all groups need it. Maybe they find the necklace and that leads them into town, and then they find the information that way. Or maybe it doesn't matter. They got enough going on. They don't need to know every little story bit. But in terms of combat, this fight is provides a really interesting kind of choice here. A little different than anything maybe that your PCs have done so far, which is like a pair of enemies that are very tactical in nature, right? Jaal and his wolf are like bonded in terms of like, it's only a druid and their animal companion could be. And so in that case, they benefit from each other. I'll get to that in a second. I kind of get ahead of myself. Jaal is a werewolf. He's got human form. When they meet him, he's in human form. I think the first thing he needs to do in combat is I think he needs to go to his hybrid form. He needs to get the werewolf face, get the teeth, really hammer it home. Hey, players, this is a freaking werewolf. He's got katars. Let me see if I can show his picture here, right? He's got these sort of like, he looks like Jon Snow, as my players said. But he's got these katars in his hands. They're +1 katars that allows him to like fight. Even though he's a werewolf and even though he has claws, I like the flavor of him using the katars because this is his signature weapon, his style. They might do slightly less damage than the claws, but if they crit, they make up for it with the deadly trait. So, and it has the +1 striking. So yeah, I think using the katars is probably the way to go. He does have a bite attack. The bite does a lot of damage. It also can inflict lycanthropy. If they fail the fortitude saving throw, they will become a werewolf. They'll be cursed and become a werewolf. That's a pretty heavy thing to put on your PCs, right? They'll probably have to counteract it. It'll probably be like a side quest that comes up. I don't think Jaal is necessarily the kind of person that is vindictive enough that he would feel that he should inflict lycanthropy on people. Maybe as a threat, maybe as a way to get them to back off. I don't know. I would use the bite almost as a last resort. If your PCs give him an opportunity, if they go prone in front of him or something, if their neck is there, maybe his bestial side takes over. He hasn't had a good meal in a while. Maybe then I really lean into the bite being a big deal. So when he uses the bite, you should highlight it and let you know, guys, this is dangerous. The bite is no joke. Damage wise, it's not a big joke. Like damage wise, it's fine. But the lycanthropy, unless you really want to deal with it as a DM, don't just throw the bite out like crazy. Um, so this is the tactical thing I was talking about. He has this ability called Wolf Coordination. If he strikes someone within his wolf's reach, it's an extra 1d6 damage. This isn't precision damage either. It's just straight extra damage off the weapon. If the wolf strikes somebody next to Jaw, it's the same thing, an extra 1d6 damage. So these guys really want to be fighting in tandem with each other. They really want to be like flanking enemies with each other, giving that extra damage. And you should highlight this to your PCs, right? They're getting positioned, they're using combat tactics that they've trained for. They're flanking you, they're getting extra damage. The PCs should be telegraphed this so they can think tactically and say, how do we stop them from gaining this advantage? How do we separate these two from each other to take away their advantage on us? Well, luckily for us, or luckily for them, the designers in this pavilion created this thing. It's a 10-foot high raised platform over 15 feet of water. Banks are like low, like 10 feet under the bridge or under the pavilion. The mushrooms grow about like 3-4 feet high at the tallest. So even the height, like even somebody would need to jump from the top of the mushrooms all the way up to the platform. That's a 6-foot jump, right? That's a pretty decent jump. It's not easy to get up in the middle of combat, is what I'm saying. Especially for a wolf that can't jump up and like use hands and fingers, they have to make a pretty good jump. So this means your PCs can use the height. If they can knock one or both of the people off the platform down, that's gonna like end the fight. If the wolf gets separated and knocked down, the wolf's not getting back up. The wolf has an athletics of plus 11, and if you look at the high jump action that would give them enough jump to probably just reach it, the DC is 30. That means that you need to roll a 19 or a 20 to even get up here. That means knocking the wolf down should be a valid way to solve this fight, right? Jaw doesn't want to lose his wolf. Maybe that triggers him to give up or try to run away. If Jaw gets knocked down, he's probably just looking at this and saying, you know, calling his wolf, and they're shifting and they're running off. They don't want to stay and fight. They're not worth dying. But the height element here is really cool, really dramatic. So yeah, play up the height. Make sure the PCs realize they're 10 feet up. Something that goes down is not getting back up very easy. Yeah. This will be the first fight dealing with heights and stuff that other than maybe my PCs did Mr. Beak on the roof earlier, but other than that, this will probably be one of the first height elements fights that you deal with. But that's definitely the key thing here. 6-foot gap if you're generous as the DM to jump up. Okay. On top of all that, with Jaw being a mastermind, having guitars, biting, having all this cool abilities with his wolf, don't forget, he's a druid. His backstory is he was with the Stone Ring Pond druids, hiding there when he was infected with the lycanthropy. He went out and murdered people. I like to think that Jaw is not malicious. I like to think that the beast took over and he was doing these things, out of force, right? He didn't want to do it. He wasn't a mean guy. It just happened. And that's why he's segregated him here for 30 years, because he feels bad. He realizes that what he did is not right, so he secludes himself down here and survives on cave crickets, and like that's something that he's done to himself. He could easily just leave, go to the next town, and do his things, but I think he really wants to atone for what he's done. I don't think the story makes sense otherwise. So maybe there's some resolution here for him to go back. Maybe you can capture him as a prisoner and take him back. Maybe the PCs let him go. I don't know, but like there should definitely be some, if you can manage it, there should probably be some empathy for Jaw, and don't make him just like, I'll kill everyone and turn you into a werewolf. Like, no, he's, tears in his eyes. He feels sorry for what he's done. He can't help it. Blah, blah, blah. So, that being said, he's a druid, right? He has spells. He's a full spellcaster, just like Volok. Most powerful spell? Probably Lightning Bolt. 4d12 damage in a straight line, like zoom, in the reflex save. But look at the setup, right? The PCs are coming in a straight line at him, and he has lightning bolt. That's not very nice, Paizo. Your PCs are not going to have a good time with that. So if you really want to have them do that, if they don't get the drop on initiative, they're screwed. Other than that, he also has another spell not to overlook. It's kind of dumb in a way. It's called Wall of Thorns. It allows, like, basically he makes a wall of brambles here, and every time they move through it they take damage. I think it's 3d4 piercing damage as they have to push through it, or they burn it away, or it slows it down. It gives them time to prepare. 3 actions, which is kind of weak for the damage. But if his thing is to, like, go away, boom, have him throw up the Wall of Thorns. Maybe don't expect to kill your PCs with it, but he can use it. If you want to kill your PCs, use Lightning Bolt, right? Don't forget he also has Heal Pet as a focus point. He can heal his pet with 1 or 2 actions. It's heightened up to, I think, let me check what it is. It's heightened up to, well, I just rolled it and it wasn't heightened, but I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be heightened to 3rd level like his cantrips here. So that's 3d8 healing, and then the 2-action version an extra 8, so that's 24 plus 3d8 for the 2-action version on his pet. He's a druid, he loves his pet. He'll probably heal him at some point. Let's see. Important to note here, Jaw gives up at 30 hit points. At 30 hit points, he throws his hands down, he throws his weapons. He's like, I give up. Spare me, please. I'll do anything. I do realize now they gave him a neutral evil tag. I think the evil probably comes from the werewolf side and not his side, but maybe my take on Jaw is giving him too much credit. I don't know. But at 30 hit points, he gives up. He begs for his life. He promises to hand over he gives him the necklace. They can take that back to Atari. With that necklace, they can kind of put Kalino at rest. If they kill him or turn him in, that puts Kalino to rest, because now the tied up end with his wife goes on. He can get rid of his anger. He can go back to being a nice guy or a normal guy. And the PCs get a 20% discount on everything in the Otari market, which is a good benefit for them. Otherwise, maybe the PCs just let him go as long as he promises to leave and not come back. I don't think they could ever convince him to be an ally and join them on their quest, unless they somehow are the most, persuasive and are willing to team up with the werewolf. That seems unlikely. But it is technically possible if you are a merciful GM. It even says here, whether or not he takes up his murderous ways is left for you to decide. They almost tell me that he's, evil, and I just don't want to accept it. Oh, one more thing. He has a 50 gold bounty, so if they bring him back alive or dead, they can collect on that 50 gold bounty. It's probably, I like to imagine it's 30 years old. The bounty was posted 30 years ago and everyone forgot about it. So if they bring him back, they're like going through the books and dusting off old records and saying, well, technically this bounty is still active. Yeah. And then the PCs will get paid 50 gold. Yeah. That basically it. Remember, this thing leads to a cave back to Atari. Probably won't come in very useful. Dalvin saying maybe you should have a few encounters with strange wolves that observe the PCs as they come to and from the Gauntlet. That's not a bad idea, right? There could be wolves that like watch from the Fogfen swamp. There, you have to pass through the forest to get to the lighthouse. So maybe in that area, you just see a lot of wolves watching you and such, and that's kind of like connected with Jaw in some way. That's not a bad foreshadowing for werewolf stuff. Dalvin said he likes my take on him. He's prepared a few heal spells, but when he could have prepared more offensive spells, so maybe he's not into murdering. I think that's a good point. If he was all about murder, why would he have the heal spell prepared, right? His druid nature he still has some kernel of like his original self in there. I'm sure he's lost it over the last 30 years. I mean, he forgot how to speak. When the PCs meet him, he can only bark until they talk to him, and he's, oh yeah, I can talk, and then he tries talking. I would really like to see the PCs try to cast speak with animals and then talk to him and have Jaw talk back in wolf. That would be funny. Let's see. Yeah, the remorseful werewolf hiding nearby and reliving each day is much more interesting and better interactions for the PCs. That's what I think. I think it's better. It's more nuanced, but it also makes it harder on your PCs, right? If your PCs just need a bad guy to kill, just let him be bad. But if your PCs will appreciate the sort of nuance of an anti-hero or somebody, not even an anti-hero, just somebody, a tragic villain, lean into that side. All right. Let's move on to the next fight because we are running late. It's already, geez, we've been streaming for like an hour. Uh, the Void Glutton, guys, guys, don't fight this. Seriously, seriously, don't fight this. First of all, it's locked behind this infinite staircase, which I didn't get much time to talk about. But the staircase, if you go to the right, it spirals up infinitely. If you go to the left, it spirals down infinitely. Did I get that right, or did I get that backwards? The hallway loops back. If the heroes go clockwise, the stairs lead upwards. So if you go like this, it's up. So left, if they go left clockwise, it's infinitely up. If they go counterclockwise, it's infinitely down. It doesn't actually go up and down. It's just Belcorra has folded time and space to make this infinite in her studies. This should give the heroes a glimpse of how powerful Belcorra is that she can do this. Right here on the battle map, this is very obviously a secret door. In the description, if you look at it, it says, the PCs are there's an invisible wall, right? So if you're playing on a VTT like I did, if you're playing on Foundry like I did, this is what I like to do. Let me pull up one of the old characters just to see what it looks like. I added a wall here, an invisible wall that blocks vision but not movement, exactly like an invisible wall should. In that case, if the PCs come down the hallway, I'll show you what the PCs see. They see this. Looks like a normal hallway, right? But if the PCs somehow make their check that you give them, then the token can move right through the wall. And once they're through the wall, they can see right back out. And then they can go into Belcorra's office. I can't go down more because it's locked. But that's the good way to do it in Foundry. Just add this wall. You want it to be wall direction. The sight restriction is normal. The sound restriction is normal. No movement restrictions, and only one direction. That is how you add this wall into Foundry. Anyways, like I said, don't let your PCs fight this. Okay. The Void Glutton. It's a level 8 creature. Remember, your PCs are level 4, maybe level 5. This is a level 8 monster. Yeah, bad news. Uh, it has a plus 20 strike that can immobilize your PCs. Not deal damage, just immobilize them. That takes a DC 26 save just to get out. That means if this thing wanted to, it could just like lock down every person in your party and murder them. Uh, it's got 25. No, sorry. I was thinking of Volek. 30 AC. With a plus 13 to hit, you still need a 17 to hit this thing. That's incredible. It's got 90 hit points. It attacked as 1d6 plus 46 force and has a DC 26 save versus fear. It can obliterate unequivocally any hero who happens to wander into its lair. It doesn't even have a weakness. Volek has weaknesses. This thing has no weakness. It's immune to all kinds of spells. It's a wisp. But the book gives you one tiny out here, which is to say, if the PCs get in over their head, it will agree to just take one and allow the rest to get away so it can keep the one here and slowly torture it over months and months. Now, I don't know a single PC in my experience that would be okay with abandoning one of the other characters and running away. It just would never happen. My PCs would TPK before they'd allow that to happen. But it is an option. It is something you may need to pause the game as a GM and say, look, guys, this thing will kill you. They can always come back and deal with it later when they're stronger. I would 100% have Otari, in the exposition, in the exposition that he says, like, look, Volek's building the lighthouse. He's working with something terribly powerful here in Belcorra's quarters. Don't go there. It's not worth it. But maybe you should foreshadow that there's some nice treasure in there so that they might want to come back later at higher levels and deal with it. The only thing I can think of, the only reason I think this makes any sense, other than being something that your PC should die to, is to set up that idea that going into the next book, you never know if the thing you're dealing with is maybe too powerful or not. The next book is less linear in terms of exploration, which makes it harder on us GMs to prep for. But maybe this is just a foreshadowing and saying, hey, sometimes you turn a corner and there's something too powerful and you need to run. It won't chase beyond the Belcorra's office, so that's I guess the one saving grace. But if you played this as a tough GM, you could just ectoplasmic web one creature, stick it, give them the deal, and force them to abandon their friend. And if they don't, they probably TPK. Just saying. Don't play this optimally, but use it to scare the bejesus out of your PCs. Oh, yeah, hopefully the PCs meet Atari before the Void Glen. Remember, the circumstances for them to find this would be A, coming this way and not following the green light to Atari. Maybe if they came through the cavern. B, coming into the infinite staircase. C, finding this. So the check to find this, it's only a DC 20 perception check. That's not good. It does say a DC 26, like the illusory object spell. Maybe we should take a look at the spell real quick. You create an illusory visual image of a stationary object. The entire image must fit, blah, 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 blah. The object appears to animate naturally. Any creature that touches the image or uses the seek action to examine it can attempt to disbelieve your illusion. So, I guess that's the thing. They can find the illusion with the DC 20 check, right? But they still need to make a DC 26 will save to even get through. So, if all of that happens, then highlight, right? This is really cool stuff. Seeing Belcorra's images, feeling the energy, seeing her past life is really cool. But you should make them feel like, there's an unsettling presence here. Scare them, hit them, do not crit and max damage them. Let them run away. Or maybe one of your PCs really wants to switch PCs. This is a good chance to kill them off so they can. Uh, um, let's see. Valgriss, I'm already going too long. I don't want to talk too much about Valgriss. Valgriss is kind of cool. She's a Velstrak. Um, Note that the whip she has here in the torture rack, it's a +1 ghost touch whip. Ghost touch is really cool because they fight a lot of ghosts. That whip is symbolic because there's another Velstrak on a lower level, on the next level down, in fact. If the PCs have that whip and display it, the other Velstrak will basically leave them alone because they revere it so much because this is kind of like a sisterly creature to them. Also note, the Velstrak's one of the rare creatures in this adventure path that has attack of opportunity. Make sure you use it. The fear aura is also scary, and the room description has chains everywhere, so your Velstrak can animate these chains and get them from anywhere in this chat, anywhere in this room, right? If the animated chains hit them and crit, it grapples them. It causes a persistent damage that they can't stop while the chains are in them. It's very flavorful. It's a very awesome fight. I think it's also very straightforward. She has attacks. She has attack of opportunity and persistent damage and, regeneration, like all kinds of stuff. I don't want to take too much time covering it because I'm already going long. And I also feel like, as far as the other fights go, it's pretty straightforward. This shrine, it's flavorful, but it's straightforward. The last major plot point I wanted to get to is Otari himself, which we've talked about a few times. Otari Ilvashadi, the rogue who was part of the Rose Guard, fell below the vault as it collapsed in the upper levels during the fight, survived, made his way down here over the course of a few days, and was killed by some sort of a disease. It was called filth fever from the creature here, which is already dead. This is the most important plot point, the most important story beat on this entire floor. You have to get your PCs here. You just have to, in any way you can. It does a few things. One, it sets up the call to adventure for the next book. He is the only reason you get to know that the 4 symbols of the Rose Guard are needed to go further in the dungeon. He's the only reason that you even know what's going on with Belcorra down lower, right? They have to meet him. They have to, they've been given literal green flashlights to guide them here, right? Make sure they get here. During the combat, because as they see him, before anything can happen, the creatures will spawn up. He actually is the first time they ever hear the phrase "the eyes of empty death," which directly ties to Nimbleth, right? Highlight this by having the flicker wisps hiding in the dark water. They rise up behind the group, and as he talks about the eyes of empty death, it should look like 2 eyeballs in the dark watching them before they start to float apart and they realize it's actually wisps. Make it feel like it is the eyes of Nimbleth, that they are being watched by this creature that is connected to this place. Literally have it look like the eyes of a bigger creature. Any lore your PCs haven't got now, this is the time for Otari to dump on them, right? Maybe your PCs are not very lore heavy. Maybe your PCs like Dalvin did not do, like CJ did not do a lot of interactions with Otari, so they don't have a lot to go on, right? This is your chance to just vomit lore on them. Otari knows everything that your PCs need to know for any reason. He's your way to get that to them. You should explain Belcorra's intent, the secret behind the lighthouse, anything that's hard to figure out that makes this a deeper experience. Give it to Otari to tell them. Also, highlight his sense of unfinished business, right? He died here, and it was so important to him that somebody know that his spirit has hung around for 500 years, hoping that somebody comes along that he can give this information to, right? The PCs are the first glimmer of hope he's had in 500 years, and he's symbolically passing the torch to them. If your party has a rogue like mine does, the passing of his fabled lockpicks should be a big moment for him that allows Otari to pass on. If those lockpicks make their way back to town, that's going to raise that person's status in the town, right? That's like a Rose Guard icon. Oh my God, they love the Rose Guard. They're like Rose Guard fanboys in Otari. So this is not only symbolically, but like literally passing on to the next generation of heroes. And put that mantle on your heroes as they feel the weight of like becoming the new Rose Guard on their shoulders. His spirit should stay here until the transition to book 2, as a resource to talk to get information from. Don't like have him like give the stuff and then disappear until the Rose Guard icons are placed. Otari should be here for your PCs. The other thing I just want to highlight, Otari was said to be like the jokester of the party. He was always there to provide humor in a time of need. No matter how dire things got, no matter how terrible things were, he was the one in the Rose Guard that provided that boost of humor. So, that being said, think of some fun ways to bring the humor into the situation, right? For instance, upon finally meeting the heroes for the first time after all the flicker groups were defeated, the willow was gone, he can look at them and with a dead serious expression say, "Finally, I've been dying to meet you." Right? Puns, death puns, as many death puns as you can work in. Make Otari feel like the light, like a lovable character. He should have that hope, that charm, that funniness, that he should not have lost that in any way over the years. Just a little flavorful thing that'll make Otari take him up one more notch in your games. I'm gonna probably make a list of all the different kind of death puns I can do and try to work in as many as I can. That's my plan. Lazda, Lazda's here. He's got a thing. Once they get him free, they can take him back to town. That's gonna have a huge resolution back there. Make him friends with the Roddy Rockfish. They will give them the family shield to kind of symbolically help them as they go on. There's a lot going on here, but I think you as a GM can read it and just kind of get it off the bat. I don't think I need to help you guys with a lot here. Oh, Dalvin saying the new better Rose Guard, since the first one did a pretty poor job by killing Belcorra and not even finding out there were lower levels. That's the thing that irks me the worst, is that the Rose Guard came here, defeated Belcorra, defeated this castle, and like We're like, should we look downstairs? And they're like, nah, we're probably cool. And then they put their weapons on their shoulders and went back home. Like, their friend died. There is literal resurrection magic that the cleric in the party probably had access to, and they didn't even try to retrieve the body. The Rose Guard were really bad at what they did, and I don't know how there's any other way to spin it than that. Oh, Rose Guard. Okay, one last fun tip. The last thing I'm going to leave you with before I sign off here in the Ghost Walk. There are two Karn Whites. And I used to say wit, but I looked it up, and I guess white is the correct word, which seems weird. But the Karn Whites. Fight's pretty normal. They come out, they attack. But here's one lore tidbit if you look into the Whites. It does say that the Karn Wits have an unusual affinity for music. The lyrics of their dirges often contain a valuable bit of knowledge or long lost lore. And a dirge, because I had to look it up, it's like a little like funeral poem or processional thing that you would say at a funeral that people could kind of chant together or whatever. So it should be kind of morbid in nature. Um, they have a funeral dirge ability, right? Two actions, they say it. They can't chant for a few rounds. It can scare all the PCs, right? Use this as a chance to sort of give some lore about the situation, right? Because these things know all the secrets. They should be a source of information that maybe they can't get otherwise, right? So I've written two dirges that you can use. No guarantees they're any good. I wrote them. This was kind of like a rough draft. I might revisit this if I have time before my PCs get it. Here's the first dirge that I wrote. I'm sorry, world. They traveled here from afar, some bathed in a holy aura. But here is the tomb of those who dare faced Belcorra. Right? I rhymed aura with Belcorra. It wasn't easy to rhyme with Belcorra, believe me. There's a lot of like, this is, this is the only way they will have any idea what these tombs are all about, right? We'll see. Secondly, the second dirge. This one's a little wordier. She once graced the land with her 7-point touch. Wisps are now drawn here like a flame and a moth. If you're not careful, then you will be next, devoured by the gaze of Nimbleth. So I was trying, like, there's too many syllables. I'm trying to rhyme moth with Nimbleth because, again, it's not easy to rhyme with Nimbleth. But this does set up the idea that Nimbleth actually touched this place. It's maybe the first time they even hear the word Nimbleth and know exactly what it is. Workshop it, come up with another one. But the dirge that these things sing, the funeral dirge, it should be full of lore. Gives them some lore that fits and creeps your party out. Again, I don't know if it's any good or not. Let me know. Let me know in the comments. Dalvin seems to say it's nice and full of information. It does its job, right? Also, one small thing I didn't like about the map, there's a secret passage here, but it's only visible with a hard perception check through a coffin. But on the map, the way it's drawn is very obviously a secret map. So take your favorite image editor, make a copy of one of these other nooks, and copy paste it over the top. And then when your PCs come through, like for instance, let me grab this token over here. Then when your PCs come through, it's not as obvious. I mean, it's still a little obvious, but it's not as obvious. Yeah, or use Narki's map. That is true. I'm trying to stick to like the baseline maps. I do like the flavor of these. Narki's maps are growing on me, and I'm really considering maybe switching over to them. I don't know. But if you use this maps like me, copy paste this and you're good to go. All right, guys. Thanks for sticking in with me. I mean, we've been streaming for almost an hour and a half now. That's longer than I usually go with these. But it's been a while. I missed you guys. I hope you get some good information out of this video. Yeah, this is it. This is the end of this book, right? The Ruins of Gauntlight. So let me know how it's been going with your games. I like to hear other people running it. I don't see a lot of people running it online. Dalvin and CJ, I hope your games are going really awesome. I hope you've been getting some tips from this. Give me some tips back for my group, and we can help each other out. Otherwise, that's going to do it for me tonight. Thank you to CJ, Delvin, and Valak for hanging out and chat with me. Everyone who watches on YouTube, I know this gets a lot of traction on YouTube. Definitely give us a like, give us a follow. If you guys are really enjoying this information, we have the ability to take Twitch Prime subs, right? So if you have Twitch Prime and you're not currently giving it to me, come over to my channel, twitch.tv/DMSteve. You can give us your monthly free Prime sub. It'll help me make more content like you guys like this for the future. Also, if you're curious in seeing not just theoretical help, but actually watch my group play, we're playing through this adventure path Wednesday nights, 7 o'clock Pacific to 10. It's like 3 hours, 7 to 10, every Wednesday. Twitch.tv/DMSteve, the same channel that you might be watching this on right here. It also goes up on YouTube. You can find the playlist as well. My next prep video will be in 2 weeks, and I know I said that last time and it was a month, but I think it will really be 2 weeks. Let me just look at the calendar to make sure that 2 weeks is not some holiday I don't know about. 2 weeks is August 1st. Yes, I will be here in 2 weeks, August 1st. We will continue the look. We'll actually be looking at the next book, The Hands of the Devil, written by Vanessa Hoskins. Really cool. She's been dropping in on some of my chats and my streams, and I've gotten to pick her brain a little bit, which is going to help us in maybe getting some detailed information that I might otherwise miss. I think I'm going to start in 2 weeks, probably just kind of like a quick overview, what's in this book from beginning to end. And then every week after that, probably start looking at three. There's 3 levels in that one, so we'll look at all 3 levels. Again, it's a little different because the PCs are more free to go between levels at will. So we gotta do more work to prepare. So I need to make sure to get all 3 of those videos done as soon as possible, because not only do I personally need to make sure that I know that information, you guys at home probably need it as well. At least here you kind of know where your PCs are going to go one level at a time, right? We'll see. Anyways, that's going to do it. I don't have a good way to sign out. I'm bad at signing out. Take care until I see you guys next week. Stay safe. Stay healthy. Goodbye.